The 1983 Disney LaserDisc video is happening. It's not going to be released anytime soon, but it's happening. But I figured since the 1983 video involves watching 9 short compilations in a row that, let's face it, are all absolute snooze fests, I decided to take a break. For my sanity. I don't have much of that left at this point, which definitely wasn't helped by this stupid, awesome, amazing, terrible show, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about my last video. Wasn't it great? Wow, this is a crazy looking animated film. It's so realistic you'd think it's live action. No, not really. I know it's odd to talk about this so soon after I made the video, but after 5 months of work and literally learning editing techniques as I went along, there's no denying that the video is a bit sloppy. Rough around the edges, if you will. I'm still proud of how it turned out, but even while editing the video, I couldn't help but think, I could do better. But hey, that's what YouTube is all about, especially in the early stages of making a channel. There's always room for improvement. But there's one part of that video that feels completely out of place. It has nothing to do with the rest of the video and really doesn't have any reason being in the video at all. Here, let's watch all the other stuff I could be watching instead of this, including Beastars. Well, that was weird. What was that? I basically halted the entire video to make a Beastars reference. Well, I guess it's not that bad, right? I mean, it's a long video, and that reference is only like 5 seconds long, so what's the big deal? There were 3 other Beastars references in that video. This experimental humanoid animal stuff would eventually lead to this, then this, then this. Well, maybe not that last 7 years away from Bambi's first release, 6 years away from Cinderella, and 8 years away from Peter Pan's release. That's really weird. It makes this film feel like more. So, I included 4 references to a furry anime in my video about Disney LaserDiscs. Okay, that may sound fine enough on the surface, but digging just beneath the surface reveals that this represented a phase, a chapter in my life, a full-on obsession that I've only just recently come out of. This is the story of how Beastars broke me. Alright, let's go back to a little time I like to call late October of 2022, when I wasn't very happy. I wasn't depressed or anything, but I couldn't help feeling I was missing something big in my life. I needed something to distract me from the monotony of work and school, or else I was just going to go completely insane. Or become completely depressed. Either way was an issue. Keep in mind, I was only just beginning to get ideas on how to make a YouTube video at this point, and I didn't even own a camera, so we were still pretty far away from that becoming a thing. One night, I found myself browsing through Netflix on my laptop, looking for something, anything to watch. I wanted some show I could sink into and commit to so I could have something to look forward to every night. And then, I saw it. Squid Game. Yeah, someone else was using the account at that point, so I didn't actually watch Squid Game. Still haven't to this day, because the next night I decided I really wasn't feeling anything live action. I wanted an animated show. That's when I saw Beastars, just sitting there in the anime section. I was extremely hesitant to click it because I could tell just by looking at it that it was a furry anime, which is a lethal combination of adjectives middle school bullies thrived off of. And yet, I was getting desperate. I needed something to watch. So, reluctantly, I clicked play on the first episode. I finished it and thought to myself, hey, that was actually pretty good. I want to keep watching this? And so I kept watching it. And what to my wondering eyes should appear but a stop motion opening. Oh my gosh, I love stop motion so much, and it was utilized to such a It's so good! And then I got to the end of episode 2 and witnessed an anthropomorphic rabbit girl stripping down to just her underwear. This, naturally, freaked me out to no end. This wasn't just furry anime, it was furry bait. I couldn't watch this. I was a good Christian child, and I needed something else to watch right then and there. There was no way I was gonna keep watching Beastars. I finished both seasons in under 2 weeks. I know that doesn't sound like that fast, but I'm not one to binge watch a show. Like, ever. I like to pace myself with a show I like, usually 1 episode a day. But for some reason, despite the fact that there were plenty of scenes in the show that made me actually look away from the screen on account of them basically being softcore furry porn, Beastars proved to be the one exception to this binging rule I had. So, yeah, the entire series was over within 2 weeks, and I was absolutely floored. I had never seen a better show in my entire life. Dare I say it, but Beastars was a masterpiece of a show. I'm going to be going into a full analysis later on in this video, but for now, let's just leave it at the fact that I loved Beastars. And then I watched the entire series again a month later. This time I paced myself with 1 episode a day leading up to Christmas Eve. Yes, that was completely intentional. And this only made me love it even more. I couldn't believe it. I thought I'd be bored of the show by now, but I was hooked. I loved everything about it, except for the sexy stuff. The foreshadowing I hadn't noticed the first time, the characters, the art style, there was so much to love, and it was great. At this point, I was working on my video. I was still in the beginning stages of acquiring and watching all the movies, so I had a lot of time before I actually finished it. This is actually when I sort of fell off the show. I hadn't told anybody I'd seen it, except for like 2 very close people, so Beastars kind of fell off the radar. Despite that, I couldn't help but think back to that show every now and then. While at work, I would think about my favorite parts of that show and aspects I thought could have been improved and who my favorite characters were, so while I wasn't actively watching the show, my mind would still wander back to Beastars from time to time. But it only gets worse from there. Fast forward to early February, and I found myself in almost the exact same boat I was in when I first watched the anime. I was balancing schoolwork, a part-time job, and working on the videos simultaneously. I remember it vividly. I actually filmed and edited the Disney Christmas Gift, Dumbo, Winnie the Pooh, Davy Crockett, and the one and only Genuine Original Family Band segments in a week. I was getting so much work done on my video, which inevitably led to me getting completely burnt out. I needed a break. I decided to go to the mall, which had the best bookstore in my area. I ended up in the manga section, and that's when I saw it, sitting on the bottom shelf of the B section. What do you think it was? Yes, it was Beastars, the manga series. I had purposely stayed away from the manga since I watched the anime. I knew that the manga was much farther along than the anime, and I didn't want spoilers. After all, I was definitely going to choose the anime over the manga. I bought the first 2 volumes. I decided as long as I didn't go past what the anime had covered, I would be totally fine. And besides, I'd already fallen as far as I could into Beastars. There's no way I could go any further. I read the first 2 volumes of the manga, and wow. Just wow. I couldn't explain it. I still can't fully explain what made me fall for this series so much, but it happened. I found myself, once again, completely hooked on Beastars. I read both volumes the day I bought them from the nice yet overpriced bookstore with a name that rhymes with Barnes & Noble, but I wasn't satisfied. I needed to get the rest of the series. I couldn't leave myself hanging like that. My Amazon purchase history at this point is a complete blur. Over the span of February 18th through to March 8th, a little over 2 weeks, I had completed my set of Beastars manga, spending over $200 to get the whole thing. Yes, I broke my own rule and bought the books that took place after the end of Season 2, and I'm honestly so glad I did. Again, the analysis will come after this, but for now, I had the full set and couldn't be happier. But then, things took a dark turn. I think it was a mixture of having something I really liked, along with not having anyone to talk about it to, because I started subconsciously finding ways to mention Beastars in my daily life. The best example of this is definitely the video. You know that Dumbo scene I mentioned earlier? Well, that Beastars reference? That was actually already there before I bought the manga, I just thought it'd be funny. But I did go back and edit Louie's face on Bambi's head in the Disney Christmas Gift segment. And then added the other references throughout the video as they came up on the editing block. That's right, behind the scenes during the filming of this, I was completely hooked on Beastars. I would talk about as much as I could without coming off as a furry weeb, which is as hard as it sounds considering the subject matter. Whenever I played Gmod with the bros, I would go out of my way to start using character skins of Beastars characters. When I got into modding Mario Kart Wii and messing with the audio files, the first thing I did was, of course, Beastars was everywhere in my life. I literally couldn't stop thinking about it. I read the entire manga series not once, not even twice, but 3 times over the span of a month. It was all I could think about besides work, school, and my video. And once my video was published, of course, Beastars took center stage in my life. I was referencing it constantly, discussing it with people who don't care, and even scrolled through the Beastars subreddit on more than one occasion, which, trust me, is not common for me to do with anything. This persisted for a long time. Seriously, it lasted months. Beastars was all I could think about. Not until very recently did I realize it was becoming a genuine obsession and stop myself from going any further down this rabbit hole. Oh God, that was not an intended pun. I don't want to think of any more rabbit holes, dear Lord. But after all of this is said and done, the big question is, why? Why did this series entice me the way it did? And honestly, as I write this script, I'm not sure either. Seriously, I'm just thinking up the script as I go along. So hopefully, taking one final look back at the entire series as a whole will help me figure out what the heck made this stupid show my obsession for almost half a year. Alright, so if you've somehow made it this far in the video and have absolutely no idea what Beastars is, then here's a rundown. Beastars takes place in a world where all the characters are humanoid animals, like Zootopia. It's a world that's inherently split up into carnivores versus herbivores, where carnivores still have that instinctual desire to hunt and kill herbivores, and suppressing said instinct proves to be a challenge for most carnivores. The bulk of the story takes place at Cherryton, a private school for gifted students, typical anime stuff. It's a pretty messed up world, and I'll go into further detail on how this world even operates with a carnivore-herbivore relationship like this, so for now, let's just explore the plot of the story as a whole. So the series is split up into multiple arcs. There's technically 5, but I feel it'll be easier if I just condense it into 3. I don't know, I feel like it'll be easier to follow that way, especially if you've only seen the anime, so I'm just going to split it up into 3 of my own curated arcs that combine multiple of the quote-unquote official arcs, aka what I found on the Beastars wiki. We have the Meteor Festival arc, which covers volumes 1 through 6 of the manga and season 1 of the anime. Then we have the Shishigumi arc, which covers volumes 7 through 11 of the manga and season 2 of the anime. Finally, we have the Melon arc, which covers volumes 12 through 22 of the manga. There's no season 3 of Beastars yet, but it's apparently coming out in 2024, so that's cool. I'll be talking about the manga and anime simultaneously, with more focus on the manga because I do think it's superior to the anime, but there's not much difference in terms of plot. At least at the beginning. Looking at the beginning of the series, it's easy to tell that the author, Paru Itagaki, had a decent idea of where to take the series, at least for the first arc. This is a trend that unfortunately does not continue, as we'll see in the future. It's weird how the art style changed throughout the series. The art design as a whole always felt less like humans that look like animals, and more like animals that look like humans. I know that doesn't make much sense, but there's something about Paru's art design that just absolutely nails the idea of animals with humanoid characteristics. Like, you could easily Photoshop character faces onto their real-life counterparts and it'd look perfectly fine. But the early artwork is kinda bad. Being the very beginning of Paru's first major leap into a serialized manga, it works, it does its job well, but after finishing the series, it's a bit tough to go back to the earlier volumes just because of how much the art evolved. This isn't an issue with the anime since it has its own distinct style altogether while still honoring Paru's original designs. I don't watch any anime, so I'm not entirely sure whether or not the CGI approach is unique to Beastars or if it's a common trend, but it really helps make this series stand out from the other animated content I've watched. Like, seriously, the only other anime I've actually watched is the first 2 seasons of the Pokemon anime, and comparing the two is like night and day in terms of art style. Probably an unfair comparison, considering these are decades apart, but like I said, I don't watch much anime. But what I wish was in the anime more often was some of the frickin' awesome cartoonish faces some of the characters make throughout the manga. Seriously, finding these throughout the story is worth buying the entire manga for. Anyways, the Meteor Festival arc is the most important from a storytelling perspective. It needed to serve as a way to introduce the reader to this new world, while also being a great hook that enticed the reader to dive into the story. And I think Haru absolutely nailed both of those ideas in the very first chapter. The entire story of Beastars opens with the death of a character, an alpaca named Tem. We're not given any other context besides Tem's little speech about how deep down all herbivores know that this is how it'll end for them and that all carnivores are monsters, blah blah blah. We get a splatter of blood and then immediately cut to the squad hanging out, and we will get back to the squad later because I got a lot to talk about with these guys. But anyways, this juxtaposition pretty much sums up the general vibes of the entire series. One moment we have the dark, twisted murder of a high school student, the next we have this slice of life thing going on. I really like how the series opens. It does a great job at showing that this is going to basically be Zootopia, but dark. Okay, saying that out loud sounds really stupid, but it's true. That's what this series is. It's an adult-oriented Zootopia. It takes a while before we're actually formally introducing the main character, a gray wolf named Legoshi. When he first appears, he's hiding in the distance, and his face is covered in these harsh shadows that just make him look completely menacing. I love it! This trend continues when we first see the drama club and we get our first good look at Legoshi. The way he just towers over everybody, continuing the trend of dark shadows slightly covering his face, makes it so that what he says about Tem isn't entirely weird. It's just off-putting when combined with how he's drawn in this beginning portion. The anime does things a bit differently. Legoshi doesn't actually say anything until way later in the first episode, which I think honestly takes away a bit of this character introduction. Like, they have everything else down, but we're really missing that one thing to make the whole situation more unsettling. Anyways, if there's one thing I don't like about how Legoshi is introduced in both the manga and the anime, it's that I think he was a bit too creepy towards Els. I get it's meant to increase dramatic tension leading up to a reveal that all he wanted was to give Els Tem's love letter, but I think he should have just been like, "Hey, I have something to give you. Tem wanted you to have it." Or something like that, instead of just creeping up on her like this, because the way it's presented does feel a bit out of character. Legoshi as a character is a great protagonist. He starts the series out as a shy, quiet introvert. A lone wolf, if you will. He really only has one actual friend, who we'll get back to later. Again, I have a lot to say about the squad. As the series continues, Legoshi naturally evolves as a character. Nothing feels particularly rushed, but the most obvious turning point for Legoshi is when he has a run-in with Haru, a small dwarf rabbit. Actually, by run-in, I mean near-death experience. For Haru, not Legoshi. Anyways, late at night, Legoshi sees Haru in the distance, and 17 years of built-up carnivorous instincts suddenly come pouring out. He almost devours her, but she escapes. What's interesting to note about this is that while Legoshi recognizes Haru later in the arc, she has no idea who attacked her that night. That leads to an interesting internal conflict with Legoshi, where, as he hangs out with her more often, he struggles to decide whether or not to tell her it was him that night. But yeah, Legoshi's main conflict in this arc is struggling to cope with the fact that he's fallen in love with this rabbit. There's a lot of external factors contributing to this conflict, mainly the societal norms of carnivore-herbivore relationships not really being a thing, along with later characters like Goheen the panda, who tell him that he's misinterpreting his predatory urges as romantic feelings. He even believes that for a while. But if you think Legoshi's dealing with a lot of issues right now, that's nothing compared to the third protagonist that I have yet to mention, Louie the red deer. And yes, I call him Louie, not Rui, because that's how it's spelled in the English translation of the manga, and how it's pronounced in the English dub of the anime, and Louie rolls off the tongue way easier than Rui ever will, also the name just makes more sense. Louie is basically a stark opposite of Legoshi in terms of character. While Legoshi is more timid, introverted, and has difficulty hiding his true emotions, Louie is on a whole other level. Not only has he mastered the art of unhealthy emotion hiding, he's basically made it his entire persona. His main goal is to maintain his high social status and not show any imperfection whatsoever. He also has a clear distaste for carnivores and kinda hates himself for being such a weak herbivore, which stems from some good old-fashioned childhood trauma. So classic, healthy, definitely not mentally unstable behavior is Louie's specialty. Good for him. But now I think it's time to talk about some of the other characters introduced in this first volume. These guys are more off to the side, but are still just as cool. Let's see, we've got this girl rabbit that I forget the name of, who bullies Haru. She doesn't have much personality besides being a jerk to Haru. She also doesn't show up ever again after the first volume. She makes a brief appearance in volume 3 and then is never heard from again. This is actually a common trend with the series, as we'll find out in the second arc. Let's see, we got the drama club members, and they're pretty cool too. Bill's the main focus out of the club members, which makes sense because he impacts the story the most. He's a Bengal tiger who, unlike Legoshi, is super okay with his carnivore status, which creates some pretty good conflict between the two that we'll get into later. Besides Bill, we got Alba the Bald Eagle, Kibi the Anteater, frickin' awesome character design, Kai the Mongoose, who doesn't show up ever again past the first volume, and Tao the Panther, voiced by the goddamn voice actor for Rivali in Breath of the Wild. Actually, speaking of which, there's a shocking amount of voice actors in the English dub that were in other things, which I wasn't expecting. There's too many to really talk about in this video, but the most important thing to remember is that Free, one of the members of the Shishigumi, is voiced by the one, the only, Kellen Goff, who voiced frickin' glam rock Freddy. Alright, but I've gone long enough without talking about the elephant in the room. And by elephant, I mean dog. And by dog, I mean dogs. See, this isn't just a high school, it's an academy. And just like any good old-fashioned academy, there's dorm rooms. Each species is required to share a room, so Legoshi has its own roommates. This is where I introduce you to the Squad. This is the best group of characters in the entire series. I don't know how to explain it, but there's something so frickin' likable about the Room 701 dogs. We got Boss, the super tiny fennec fox who doesn't talk all that much. Then we got Durham and Miguno, a coyote and spotted hyena, respectively. Not much to say about these guys. Oh, but the fandom sure has taken a liking to them. Then we have Kolo the sheepdog, who, for lack of a better term, is a frickin' twink. Actually, let me read the info sheet about him from the bonus pages of Volume 6. Kolo, age 17, male, English sheepdog, birthday October 30th, blood type AB, height 5 foot 10 inch, weight 148 pounds. Yeah, these info sheets go super into detail for some reason. But anyways, most female and gay beasts who look into his eyes fall in love with him. Gay beasts. Hey guys, leave a like and subscribe if you're a gay beast, okay? But I've purposefully saved the best for last. Absolute cream of the crop. Best character in Beastars. That character is Jack, the Labrador Retriever. I'm not kidding. This guy's the best character in the entire series. He's Legoshi's best and, for a while, his only friend. He's super supportive of everyone around him, has the largest range of facial expressions out of any of the characters, and is just so freaking goofy I can't help but love him. He's literally got golden retriever energy, because, well, technically he is one. I could gush about how awesome this character is and how he should have gotten more screen presence and how the saddest parts of the series are when Jack is sad, which is super rare and just, he's so cool. So yeah, we got the best squad ever made in written history. We got Tiny Boy, Best Buds, maybe more according to the internet, Thirst Trap, Sweetest Guy, and Legoshi. Every friend group should strive to be exactly like this one because this is, without a doubt, squad goals. Anyways, now that the characters are out of the way, I should talk about the story itself, shouldn't I? I've already mentioned how the story opens with Tem's death. The next big event is Legoshi's run-in with Haru, which I'd argue is the true start of the main story, as it sets into motion a lot of later events. Tem's death, while important, is seldom talked about until the next arc, which is kind of odd from a storytelling perspective. We get this death, then basically nothing about Tem save for a couple minute-long scenes here and there, and then the next arc is all about Tem. Weird. Louie's internal conflict is first shown via this play called Adler. Louie is set to play the lead role, which is actually why a lot of people go to the play in the first place. They're literally just there to see the handsome deer boy. I can't believe I just said that out loud. Anyways, the internal conflict shows up when during an accident, Louie ends up busting his ankle. Despite this, he keeps it a secret and toughs it out until the performance. This means that everything Louie does from the accident in Volume 1 up until the performance halfway through Volume 2 is all being done while he has a broken ankle. There's a fine line between being tough and being stubborn, and at this point, Louie has crossed way over that line into completely insane. Seriously, he basically has a mini mental breakdown in front of Legoshi, which is where this iconic shot comes from. Yeah, Louie's a bit messed up in the beginning. I think Paru does have him become a bit more mellow as the series progresses, but for now, we're stuck with this.
And what if I were to offer you one of my legs? You'd salivate and happily accept, am I right?
Guys, I think they're trying to foreshadow something, but I'm not sure what. Also, why is there implied sexual tension in this scene? along with the other scene. I'm unsure how to feel about that. While Louie's dealing with whatever he's dealing with, Legoshi has another run-in with Haru where their relationship kinda grows, but not really. Keep in mind, Haru has no idea Legoshi's the one who attacked her that night, while Legoshi is fully aware who she is. She's the sole member of the school's gardening club, which is a club barely anyone even knows exists. Legoshi's sent there by the drama club to get some decorative flowers for the Adler performance, which starts up their first formal interaction since that near-death experience. This is where we start to learn more about Haru as a character. Legoshi came to the club with Kibi the Anteater, who recognized Haru immediately, freaked out, and left Legoshi to deal with her on his own. Turns out Haru kinda has a bad reputation of sleeping with a lot of guys, which is actually why Haru was being bullied in the first place. This is further explored when, after Legoshi helps Haru with some gardening and he doesn't immediately leave, Haru automatically assumes that he wants to, This is where that freaky scene I mentioned earlier happens. The sex stuff. I guess in this case, that kind of stuff does play a big role in Haru's character, so it isn't... Well, I still don't like it. It freaks me out, but I get it. To an extent. Legoshi, being the Chad virgin he is, freaks out when he realizes what Haru's implying and runs away, leaving Haru pretty confused as to what that guy's deal was. The author does a great job at making this relationship realistic. That's something I really like about this series, especially the beginning arc. Every character interaction and conflict resolution and everything just feels so frickin' real. This is how these characters would act in a real-life scenario. I like that in a story. Nothing ever really feels super out of character. Except for the initial interaction between Legoshi and Els, but I can look past that. Going back to Louie, the Adler performance actually goes surprisingly well, despite the fact his ankle is busted up. He doesn't even pass out from the pain until the curtain lowers. Good for him. But if you recall how high school plays usually go, there's typically more than one showing. So now they have another show to perform the next night and their lead actor is hospitalized. Whatever will they do? Bill the Bengal Tiger ends up replacing Louie as lead actor. He's got all the lines and blocking memorized, so he's a pretty good last-minute replacement. But the thing is, now they need someone to replace Bill's role. He was a side villain in the play, so now they need someone in the drama club who's got a similar body type to Bill. Yeah, it's Legoshi. This is actually his first time acting in an actual performance, and honestly, just looking at his face during the last rehearsal made me feel nervous for him. How is that even possible? Anyways, I mentioned earlier how Bill views his carnivore status from the exact opposite angle Legoshi does. Bill's a lot more outgoing and is always ready for an opportunity to show off his true strength. And what better way to do that than battle a fellow carnivore on stage? What could possibly go wrong? Well, right before the performance, Legoshi discovers that Bill has a small vial of rabbit's blood that he was going to drink before the performance. This, unsurprisingly, ticks Legoshi off to no end given his growing obsession with Haru. Bill's essentially made the quiet kid angry, if you know what I mean. So Legoshi decides to enact revenge in the stupidest possible way. He starts a legitimate fight with Bill, on stage, in front of a huge audience. And I think the worst part of this whole situation is that Legoshi doesn't even win. Seriously, he gets some decent blows in at the start, but then his back gets completely roughed up by Bill while he delivers a line that, in all honesty, goes pretty hard. I'm really not sure how far Bill was willing to go during this fight. Legoshi gets to a point where he can't even stand. And in the manga, Bill says, "Legoshi, you committed an unforgivable sin by upstaging me." Well, alright then. And then out of nowhere, in comes Louie saving Legoshi's butt, just like he does with... Whoa, actually, I just realized, Louie comes to Legoshi's rescue in basically, every single fight he has in this whole story. I need to double check that when I'm going back through this, so it'd be pretty interesting if that was actually, true.
Now leave! I've no time for imposters!
Whoa guys, he said imposter, just like from the 5-year-old video game. Isn't that just so frickin' hilarious? But anyways, Legoshi got mad at Bill for using rabbit's blood because he's finding himself thinking more and more about Haru. Up until now, he's not entirely sure if he's actually in love with her or anything like that. I mean, he doesn't even know her name at this point, but there's definitely something up because when Jack jokingly asks if he's in love with someone, he doesn't immediately give any sort of response. But now we get the plot twist of the century in that Haru's already with somebody. And not just anybody, but Louie of all people. What? That's crazy. This is actually a pretty good plot twist that I don't think anyone was expecting when they first got to this part in both the anime and the manga. This is when Legoshi decides to actually formally introduce himself to Haru. They end up eating dinner together, and this is a pretty well done scene. On the outer surface, the date itself is very awkward and silent. They aren't really talking to each other. But on the inside, Legoshi's freaking the heck out. He's trying to muster up the courage to ask Haru her name because, remember, they don't even know each other's names at this point. Meanwhile, Haru's got her own issues going on. Turns out, every time Legoshi opens his mouth to eat, her body instinctively warns her to run away. Despite this, they do end up telling each other their names by the end of the night. Baby steps, but steps nonetheless. But forget all that, it's time for a completely different story about a chicken. This is Lego, a chicken. Turns out the eggs the school uses for the egg sandwiches on Wednesdays are eggs that she lays. But uh-oh, one day she overhears Legoshi say the Wednesday egg sandwiches don't taste as good anymore. Does that mean she's slipping? Are her eggs really not as good as they once were? Oh, but wait, turns out that's just because her eggs were so popular amongst the school that they're now being used for Friday sandwiches, since that's their busiest day, and the end. Now you may be wondering, what was the point of dedicating an entire chapter to this story? The next chapter introduces us to a new character. This is Juno, a female gray wolf. She's a freshman who also happens to be in the drama club. We don't get much info about her just yet, but trust me, we'll get back to Juno. Actually, I think I forgot to mention the Meteor Festival, which is what this arc is named after. So, at the beginning of every summer, there's this festival honoring the extinction of the dinosaurs, which, as we all know, was brought upon by a meteor that struck the planet millions of years ago. Dinosaurs are sort of considered gods because in this world, they're technically the ancestors of all the living animals, hence the big celebration regarding the meteor. On the last day of the festival, there's a lighting ceremony. This meteor sculpture is set up, and couples who set a candle down on it are said to be bound together for eternity. This is all important to the story because the drama club is heavily involved in the festival. There's a performance they do at the festival, and the production crew is in charge of setting up the sculptures. This is all important because it means the drama club actually has to head out to the city to set up for the festival, which we'll be seeing pretty soon. Anyways, remember Juno? I hope you do because I was literally just talking about her. Turns out she has a crush on Legoshi. And for some reason, this makes Kibi the Anteater legitimately angry at Legoshi. Like, no offense, buddy, but I don't think you had much of a chance with Juno. So, Juno's got a crush on Legoshi, who has a crush on Haru, who has a crush on Louie. Jeez, this is starting to get confusing. Back to the drama club, where a select group of carnivores are heading into town to attend a meeting about the Meteor Festival. Before they leave, Louie warns them not to go to the black market under any circumstances. I wonder if they're not going to go to the black market under any circumstances. So this little squad of carnivores consists of Legoshi, Bill, Alba the Bald Eagle, and Tao the Black Panther. Oh, and in the manga, there's also this crocodile with them, but he never talks, and I don't think he has a name, so let's just ignore the crocodile. This is our first look at the city itself, and it's a lot like Zootopia, just more realistic and modern, and less like the future in Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah, so then the girl started to cry and said, "You're only focused on pleasing yourself when we're having sex, and that makes me feel empty inside." Crazy.
But now they're lost and have no idea where to go. This results in them stumbling across the black market, a back alley place where carnivores can freely eat herbivore meat. Legoshi comes to the realization that the reason carnivores and herbivores seem so peaceful in the main city is because carnivores have a place for them to go and freely eat herbivore meat, suppressing their instincts to devour a living herbivore. This is a really neat concept because it just makes sense. Like, of course carnivores are going to need some way to deal with their instinctual desire to eat herbivores, and the black market, while not the most ethically sound place in the world, serves its purpose relatively well. If not for the black market, there'd definitely be a lot more herbivore deaths in this city. This is something that Legoshi's struggling to accept. He's got these strong feelings for Haru, and at first he thought it was all romantic feelings, but now that he's in the black market, there's that concern that it might actually just be a byproduct of his desire to eat her. This is shown further when Legoshi has a run-in with Goheen, the panda. This guy's basically the self-appointed psychiatrist at the black market. He deals with carnivores who have actually killed and devoured herbivores and kinda rehabilitates them in a way via counseling. This is what he does with Legoshi and comes to the conclusion that his hunter's instincts have changed form, been sublimated into romantic feelings. But to test whether or not that's actually true, he gives Legoshi a porno mag featuring rabbits. Oh my God. Basically, if the magazine turns him on, he just has a thing for small animals. If it doesn't, then he's just obsessed with Haru, which is a problem. You know, there's a lot of stuff I don't like to think about, and anthropomorphic rabbit porn is pretty high up on the list. On his way back to school, he comes across none other than Alba the bald eagle that was with him when they got to the city. Turns out he couldn't bear to enter the black market after he thought about all the herbivore friends he has. This is actually a pretty nice moment, as it helps Legoshi realize that he's not the only one struggling to deal with his carnivore instincts. It's a nice, quiet moment that I think was done pretty well. Hey, remember how Haru and Louie are a thing? Let's go back to that real quick. And okay, I know that this whole analysis so far just feels completely random and all over the place, but this is actually pretty accurate to the chronological order of the plot. The story does have a habit of introducing a plot point, then leaving it alone, then coming back to it way later. Tem's death is the most exaggerated example, arguably not returning in full form, until 6 volumes after being introduced. But there are other plot points that aren't as severe but do the same thing. Haru and Louie's relationship is one such thing. We get 2 pages about it in the beginning of Volume 3, and it doesn't get brought up again until the beginning of Volume 4. It's not confusing whatsoever when actually reading the book, but when talking about the plot like this, I feel it does get a bit jumbled up, you know? Anyways, we get some backstory as to how Louie and Haru met up. Louie needed someplace to hide because his antlers came out earlier than expected, and he can't bear to show his face in public until he gets prosthetics. Fun fact, this part of the story is actually what taught me that deer shed their antlers. I had no idea that was the case prior to reading this, but yeah, antlers are shed once a year.
You're always gonna be the helpless little Bambi in my eyes.
Who's Bambi?
What? Did she just refer to Louie as Bambi? Is Bambi a real movie in this world? Or is it just the book the movie was based off of? What does Bambi look like in this world? Is it identical to the real-life Disney film except they're all humanoid and the hunters are some sort of carnivore? Why did she say Bambi? And this isn't like a weird one-off thing they added into the English dub or anything, because it's in the manga too. Why? World building ruined. Bambi exists, and that's a bad thing. 0 out of 10. Alright, in all seriousness, Louie and Haru's relationship makes sense. Louie found a place where he doesn't have a reputation to keep up, and he can just be alone with Haru, so it makes sense that he would gravitate towards a semi-relationship like this. Legoshi ends up running into Louie while trying to visit Haru, and this is where they both start getting suspicious of each other regarding their relationships with Haru. No accusations or anything, but they can both tell that something's up. Meanwhile, Juno starts making some tiny advances towards Legoshi. Keep in mind, Juno has no idea about Haru at this point, so she thinks he's fair game. Legoshi, being the Chad virgin he is, completely ignores all of her advances, leaving her confused and frustrated. Good for you, Legoshi. You know, I used to think that he did this as a gentle, subtle way to get Juno off his back, but now I think he's just an idiot. At this point, Legoshi actually heeds Goheen's warnings and tries to stay away from Haru. It makes sense from his perspective. If it actually is just hunter instinct sublimated into romantic feelings, then it's probably best to turn back now and play it safe. What makes him come to this realization? Well, remember that porno mag he got from Goheen the panda? Yeah, Jack found it and got super concerned. Oh, poor Jack. He didn't really need to be seeing any of that awful stuff. In all seriousness, Jack shows genuine concern over his friend, which is really sweet. He doesn't immediately freak out at Legoshi, and their friendship isn't immediately ruined by this or anything like that. I think that just goes to show how loyal of a friend Jack is to Legoshi. This little promise Legoshi makes about letting go of his feelings towards Haru unfortunately doesn't even last for a whole day. Because guess what? Legoshi finds out Louie and Haru are a thing, which leads to him experiencing severe jealousy. He's finally realized that he does indeed have a crush on Haru. I'll be honest, this part doesn't make much sense to me. If anything, seeing Louie and Haru together should push Legoshi farther away. But instead, it just makes him more horny for the bunny. I don't know, I'm sure it makes more sense from a different angle, but I'm not really seeing it. So now Legoshi is in full rabbit mode, and as a result discovers more of the societal consequences of this kind of relationship the hard way. He gets into a small argument with Haru at a public train station, which leads to bystanders assuming Haru's in some sort of danger. So now they're on the run from the cops. Yeah, the tension between the two sides means that a carnivore physically overpowering an herbivore in any way is enough to get arrested. Not sentenced per se, but arrested. Again, in a society that functions like this, of course there's going to be some tension between herbivores and carnivores, so none of this feels too terribly out of place, you know? So this next scene, for some inexplicable reason, was cut from the anime. Who knows why, it was probably something stupid like time constraints. because it does a good job at fleshing out Louie's character just a little bit. Bill reveals to Louie that he went to the black market and found out about Louie's past. Louie reacts by pointing a loaded gun at Bill's head. Jesus Christ, what the hell? I think Bill sums it up pretty well in this panel here, but yeah. So obviously Louie's got a troubled past related to the black market that he'd rather no one know about, to the point where he threatens to shoot anyone who finds out about it. I know I said earlier that Louie mellows out a bit as the story progresses, but we do have a little while before that actually happens. For now, we have a mentally ill, kind of racist deer with a gun in his pocket.
You're staring.
Sorry.
Is rudeness something that's inherent in wolves?
Also, Louie and Juno are alone together for the first time here, which leads to another fun interaction. Juno knows that Louie hates all carnivores and plans to use that as ammunition against him so she can become the next Beastar instead of him. Oh my god, I completely forgot to mention the Beastar. Okay, alright, hear me out. I know the Beastar sounds important. I mean, the series is named after it. But at the moment, we're in Volume 4. The only other time the Beastar is mentioned at this point is Volume 1. I'm dead serious. Even then, there isn't much information as to what a Beastar even is. Volume 1 just describes Beastars as school leaders who transcend all the discrimination in this world and that they become wildly successful in adulthood. That's it. So, can you really blame me for forgetting about mentioning it? But this highlights a problem I have with the series. For a series called Beastars, there isn't much talk about the Beastar at all. Maybe that'll change as we continue, but for now it's really weird. Anyways, during preparations for the Meteor Festival, a blackout occurs. These are scary because herbivores can't see in the dark. Carnivores can. Legoshi, being the noble knight he is, rushes off to rescue Haru, who's setting up a booth for the gardening club. Haru thinks he's Louie before the lights come back on, which you'd think would really deter Legoshi, but nope. He just kinda brushes it off like she didn't say anything. Seriously, what is this guy's deal? Then Juno sees Legoshi and Haru together and reacts accordingly. Alright, at this point there's been a lot of plot points that were thrown at us. Thankfully, as the story continues, Haru forgoes this approach in favor of longer stories, spreading out the more important plot points, so everything starting here should be a bit easier to follow. Louie's backstory is revealed near the end of Volume 4. They use this interesting animation style for this scene in the anime, but other than that, the story is the same. Louie was raised in the black market, specifically as live meat for carnivores to purchase. He was product number 4, and that number still haunts him as it was printed on the bottom of his foot. Of course, to show this, we naturally get plenty of close-up foot shots. Is it weird and gross? Yes. Do I like it? No. Is it weird that he has human feet even though he's a deer? Absolutely. Let's stop talking about it and hope it doesn't come up in conversation again. So how did he escape the black market? Well, he was bought by this super rich deer and raised as the heir to his company, the Horns Conglomerate. No, I have no idea what the company is, and I don't think we get an explanation. We're nearing the end of the arc. At this point, we've been introduced to all the characters and their relationships with each other. So, Legoshi tries to tell Haru that he likes her, but Haru keeps interrupting him before he can say it because she needs to mentally prepare for this. And honestly, can't really blame her. This is a lot to take in, and she's already comfy with Louie. So, Legoshi postpones his love confession until the lighting ceremony when they plan on meeting each other at the Meteor. And then Haru gets kidnapped by the Shishigumi. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Geez, this analysis is dumb. He just name drops the Shishigumi like we're all supposed to know who that is. They probably showed up earlier and he forgot to mention them. Nope. This is the first time we see them, when they just kind of sneak up on Haru and take her away to their castle or whatever. Who are the Shishigumi, you may ask? Well, they're some sort of gang made up of lions that rule over the black market. They kidnapped Haru so they could eat her. At this point, the series starts dropping the typical slice of life thing it was doing in favor of a lot more action type scenes. Not a terrible switch, but I can see how it can be a bit of a turn-off for people who fell into the series purely because of the slice of life content. Anyways, the mayor is alerted about this situation, but he doesn't want to cause panic amongst the citizens, so decides to keep things quiet. But he does tell Louie because he wants to give Louie a lesson on what the real world is gonna be like. Am I the only one that feels like this is a weird thing to do from a leadership perspective? I get Louie's on track to become the next Beastar, but he's still got a ways to go before that happens. So the mayor's basically like, I'm the mayor. I'm not going to tell any citizens about this abduction. Oh, but this 18-year-old is pretty smart and might become a Beastar someday, so I'll tell him and only him. That'll teach him a lesson about the real world. He goes on this weird tangent about how he physically altered his body to look more appealing to the masses. Yeah, it really worked. Alright, I guess I was a little too hard on this scene. Louis has promised that if he can manage to keep the whole thing quiet, his record at the black market will be destroyed. His traumatic past will finally be nothing but a bad memory. That's actually pretty tempting for him, and he acts like it's no big deal, even when Legoshi finds out what happened. This makes Legoshi mad, understandably, so he frickin' decks Louis. Jesus Christ, man. So Legoshi, with the help of Goheen, tracks down the Shishigumi headquarters and gets ready to save Haru. Also, yeah, Haru's been alive this whole time. They are taking their sweet-ass time eating this dumb bunny. But that gives them ample time to do stuff to her that I don't think I can show on YouTube. Yeah, I'm serious. It's not pretty. We actually get some interesting character development during this scene, with Haru writing a will in her head, and this is more like it. We get this honestly depressing story about how for her entire life other animals have looked down on her for being a small, weak herbivore, and it gave her this sense of inferiority. She found that the only outlet she had to truly feel like an equal in this society was by, well, having sex. That's why she had developed a reputation of sleeping with a bunch of guys. Sure, she was bullied for it, but in her mind, that was better than being pitied. I honestly like that the author made sure to flesh out Haru's character like this. I feel like it would have been extremely easy for her to just make Haru a sex-obsessed rabbit to challenge Legoshi's never-ending virginity, but no, we get some genuinely logical reasoning behind why Haru is the way she is, which directly ties back to the theme of herbivores generally being seen as weaker than carnivores. It's a sad backstory, but it's so much better than if she was just having sex with a bunch of guys purely out of plot convenience, you know? So Legoshi fights a whole lot of lions, fueled purely on rage and an insatiable desire to save Haru. He saves her life right before she gets eaten, and they both run away from the Shishigumi headquarters. But wait a minute, the leader of the Shishigumi is still alive and he's about to shoot them. And then out of nowhere, in comes Louis, saving Legoshi's butt, just like he did with Bill. This is the second time Louis saves Legoshi's butt in this story. And he is not playing around, he straight up kills the Shishigumi leader, and then tells the rest of the members to eat him while laughing like a crazy person. Trust me, he does mellow out later in this series, I swear. Legoshi and Haru end up staying at a hotel because it's too late for them to get back to the school. This is when, well, what usually happens in a cheap hotel happens. Except it doesn't happen, because, get this, Haru instinctually tries going in Legoshi's mouth when they actually try to get busy. Yeah, I find this really weird. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, like, what? Also, Legoshi finally tells Haru it was him who attacked her way back in the beginning of the story. Turns out, Haru had a feeling it was him the whole time, so problem solved, I guess. Things start to kind of go back to normal after this. We're still not fully done with the Meteor Festival arc, but we're really close. Juno talks with Haru and ends up getting pretty jealous of her. After one last failed attempt to try and win over Legoshi, we finally get the moment where Legoshi confesses his love for Haru. The arc ends with him vowing that he'll get stronger and overcome those weird carnivorous instincts he has if it means making Haru happy. So that's the first arc. Geez, that took way longer to get through than I thought it would. A lot of stuff happened in this beginning arc, which makes sense. I mean, there's tons of elements that need to be taken into account when starting a story like this. Characters need to be introduced in a natural manner, worlds need to be built up, but not all at once because that would confuse and deter first-time readers, on top of keeping the plot moving along so that it doesn't get too boring. In that sense, Paru nailed the first arc, in my opinion. Everything I just listed was done extremely well on her part. The incremental character introductions, world building, and plot movement just feels right. Everything feels realistic in this arc. All the character interactions, internal conflicts, and reasoning behind certain actions never feels extremely out of character, aside from some rare exceptions. My favorite thing about this first arc is the way Legoshi develops. Legoshi has gone from the shy, quiet introvert to a more outgoing, bold version of himself at a pace that feels right. His love for Haru is shown surprisingly well, and while that aspect of the series has never been my absolute favorite, I can definitely still appreciate how well it was pulled off here. The only protagonist that hasn't really evolved very much since the beginning of the story is definitely Louis. If anything, he's gotten even more insane than he was at the beginning, but we'll see how that changes in the next arc. Any nitpicks I may have had about this arc are just that, they're nitpicks. Yeah, it's weird that there's an entire chapter dedicated to this chicken that isn't mentioned ever again. And the Shishigumi abduction really did come out of nowhere, and I could do without some of the sexy stuff that goes on in this arc, but it'd be unfair for me to despise the show just because of that stuff, which I can accept at its best and skip over a few pages at its worst. But let's see if that continues over into the Shishigumi arc. This is the shortest arc in the series, consisting of only 5 volumes. Despite that, Season 2 of the anime is still just as long as the first one, being comprised of 12 22-minute episodes. The first season split everything up nicely, with 2 episodes roughly equating to 1 volume. So I don't know what happened here, since going by that rule would make Season 2 10 episodes long. But not only is Season 2 longer than the manga arc, but it even cuts content and adds in stuff that wasn't in the original because, well, it wasn't needed to tell the story in the original. I'm seeing a concerning amount of parallels between this and the Beauty and the Beast live-action remake. Okay, I'll admit, I was sorta lying to you. Volume 7 isn't technically the start of the arc. Technically, the end of the first arc is about halfway through Volume 6. And we're immediately given a boatload of differences that make me wonder, why was this cut from the anime? It was probably time constraints, but I'd like to think they had some evil plot to mess with the series, just so I can have an excuse to be mad at them. Nah, in all seriousness, I don't really care. It's not like people who only saw the anime are going to be confused by a massive plot hole. Instead, they'll be confused by a decent-sized plot hole. Okay, let's stop bullying the anime like this. There's a reason I specified I was going to put more emphasis on the manga when we started this analysis, and this arc is why. I'll still be using footage from the anime where applicable, but be prepared for more manga shots until then. So the Meteor Festival is over, and summer vacation has begun. But this is one of those stupid fancy schools. You know the ones. That one academy in your city that you've heard rumors about but never been to and aren't even sure where it is. A freaky school that can afford those exclusive fancy pants elective classes like Mandarin and art. Well, at least public school had more personality. Cherryton has 2 weeks of mandatory college prep courses, so students can actually stay at the school the whole summer if they want. Of course, Legoshi is one of those students, and we get a little bit of info about his grandpa, who he lives with. Not much at all, but Legoshi doesn't seem too keen to be heading home anytime soon. So the rumors have been spreading that Haru and Legoshi stayed out that night and had the sexiest sex of their lives. Obviously that didn't actually happen, but you know how high school rumors are. Jack's going through this dilemma where he wants to ask him if the rumors are true, but isn't sure how to approach the topic. The other Room 701 dogs actually held a meeting about this, and we finally get a name for the squad. Frickin' heck. A name that I will not be referring to them with because, honestly, while it's clearly poking fun at them all being virgins, it honestly reads like a mistranslation. I really don't want to think that this squad was always meant to be called the Good Cherry Boys. Anyways, Jack gets his first good look at Haru in this scene, and he reacts like... Oh my god, I love this series. We get a good look at a side of Bill we haven't seen yet, which is interesting. Ever since he went to the black market and ate some dude's finger, he's kind of started changing. He's being a lot more friendly to the herbivores and even shows genuine concern over Louie's disappearance. Oh yeah, Louie's missing, by the way. Gee, I wonder why. So far, none of these scenes have been in the anime. That's not too terrible because they're not super important to the plot, but that doesn't mean I'm okay with the fact that this got cut, but the chicken story didn't. But this next scene does actually give us some stuff that seems pretty important to me. We get this backstory as to how Jack and Legoshi became best friends. Alongside that, we learn more about this world in general. There was a big world war involving carnivores versus herbivores that happened about a century before the series takes place. As a result, to try and deter future wars from occurring, get this, they created cats and dogs as genetically modified canines and felines specifically designed so that carnivores would instinctually prioritize intelligence over combativeness. That's so completely insane to me. So Jack was basically created in a lab to be the perfect animal. And you know what? Jack is the perfect animal. Seriously though, this raises a whole lot of questions. Is Jack part of the first generation of dogs and cats, or has this been going on for a while? Are his parents dogs too, or are they wolves? Does he even have parents, or was he born in a tube? Whatever. The point is, Jack was bullied in grade school for being smarter than everyone else, and also for possibly being born in a tube. He runs into Legoshi, who's just as awkward and introverted as he ever was. Jack's jealous of Legoshi for basically being a member of his ancestor species as opposed to the artificial dog he is. Legoshi responds by saying, "I don't need combativeness or physical strength, those qualities are obsolete." That was my yearbook quote in first grade. Yeah, the exchange of dialogue in this scene does not feel like two 7-year-olds talking. Rather, it feels like how they talk to each other as relatively smart high schoolers. But yeah, that's how they became friends. Opposites attract, you know how it is. You're probably wondering when we'll get to the anime scenes, and believe it or not, but the anime is seriously so different from the manga in terms of how it opens that I'm not even sure where to begin with that. While this world building is going on in the manga, the anime has the Lollipop Guild, or whatever they're called, figuring out a Scooby-Doo-ass mystery. There seems to be a mysterious ghost haunting the area where Tem died. It's got a whole lot of eyes and it's freaking the Lullaby League out to no end. And Legoshi's hearing weird noises in the walls. What could that be? So they set up a camera in that area to try and capture the ghost. Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is with this. I guess as a show it feels better and gives the opening of the series more of a mysterious feel. But like, that wasn't what I really wanted. Like, I'll take it, but it has to live with the fact that I prefer its older brother. Back to the manga for now, and we get the sudden reappearance of Louis! It's Louis! The prodigal son, the great prince of the forest himself has returned to grace the pages of this manga with his glorious presence. But something's up. He's resigning from the drama club and leaving the school for the time being. Well, you know how he's been trying to maintain his high social status at school as a means of making up for the fact that he's a weak little stupid little herbivore? Well, now he's found a way to get a hold of some actual real power instead. He's become the leader of the Shishigumi. I still love this plot twist. It's just, I have no words, it's just great. Well, you're probably wondering how he got himself into this mess. Flashback to 2 months prior when he was being the crazy deer yelling at the lions to eat him. One of them recognizes him as the promising Beastar candidate and gets an idea. What better way to improve the Shishigumi's image and make them more respected in this modern world than by making this deer their new boss? Now, I've taken more than one business management class, and I can safely say that this is actually a pretty good idea. In this day and age, diversity in the workplace is as important as ever. The Shishigumi is made up of solely male lions, all similar ages. It is a bit presumptuous to assume that Louis is qualified to be the leader of such a company, and the Human Resources Department could gather further information on Louis during the hiring process to make sure he's the right fit for the job. But creating a more diverse workplace can benefit an organization, both internally and externally. Think of how much the company's conveyed image would be changed if they marketed themselves as more diverse. They would be more respected and trusted as an organization. And internally, having a more diverse team can help bring new, unique ideas to the table that may not have been seen by a group of similar, and as such, like-minded individuals. Yeah, sorry, I just need to apply what I've learned in school to make the cost of college feel worth it. Louis likes this idea so much that he can't help but... Oh no. Never mind. Well, he survived. Somehow. Not sure how he managed to survive being shot in the head by himself with no visible wounds, but whatever. They put it up to a majority vote, but the majority voted no. Case closed, right? Now they'll eat him. Well, for some reason, instead of going by this perfectly legal consensus, they decide to test him one more time by seeing if he can eat meat. Obviously, they're expecting him to fail. He's an herbivore. He can't stomach meat. Louis having absolutely none of this. He doesn't want to die anymore because he knows that the Shishigumi's planning on killing him if he can't eat it. Remember, Louis may be around the line of insanity, but he's still on the same side as being stubborn. So he forces himself to eat one bite and then demands more. Even though he has a full plate of steak right in front of him, why is he demanding more? The anime throws all these events completely out of order. I honestly find it hard to believe when comparing the two. The order of events in the anime is identical for the first arc, but now it's been all changed around and weird. I don't like it. It makes it harder to edit this part. Meanwhile, we see the principal of Cherryton, who's a tiger. Fun fact, in my first draft of the script, I accidentally wrote that he was a lion, and then I used that as an excuse to go on this little tangent on how it's like a cliche in furry content to make the leader a lion. But then that looked really stupid once I went back to this part during the editing and realized that he's not a lion. He's in an important meeting with other principals from the other schools around the country. Or, excuse me, headmasters. These are fancy schools. The meeting's about how Cherryton hasn't appointed a Beastar in forever, and now that Louis suddenly disappeared, the one guy who actually stood a chance, I guess everyone forgot about Juno, who also wanted to become a Beastar, but whatever. Now it's a problem. We finally get some more info on the Beastar. 7 volumes into this 22-volume long series. Okay. So each school nominates a Beastar to represent their school. But out of those Beastars, a Valiant Beastar is nominated, and he is the leader of the world. Yeah. The world. So I guess the entire world is run on a democracy system. Interesting. Well, actually, is it? Does the general public have a say in who becomes the Valiant Beastar? That must be how it works, or else the whole system just doesn't really work. Right? But anyways, everyone's fed up with Cherryton's lack of Beastars, mainly because beforehand, every Beastar from Cherryton ended up becoming the Valiant Beastar. So the group comes to the conclusion that whichever student finds the guy who killed Tem should be automatically nominated as Beastar. Yeah, Tem. Remember Tem? He died in the first episode, and now we're talking about this again 6 volumes after it happened. Yeah, like I said earlier, this is an odd approach from a storytelling perspective. And this approach to nominating the Beastar is horrendously flawed. Like, what if the person who finds Tem's killer doesn't want to be the Beastar? Or if they're, like, really stupid? Or what if the killer confesses? Will he be nominated? This is such a rash decision, you'd think it was made by a group of elected officials. Oh, wait. And finally, we're back to where the anime began. Geez, that took a while. I mean, a lot of the plot points I've discussed so far have been featured in the anime at one point or another, but in an order that's completely out of whack. Again, it works, but the manga flows better in my opinion. So the manga forgoes the brave approach of creating a Scooby-Doo super-duper Snoop or first-class Private Eyes approach that the anime went for, and cuts right to the chase. Legoshi hears a strange noise a couple times, and there aren't any ghost eyes that people are seeing. But it wasn't even a ghost. It was a snake! A big ol' snake! A snake who's been fascinated about Legoshi since the fight with Bill. This snake, who doesn't have a name as far as I know, is the school's security guard and serves as a call to action for Legoshi to track down Tem's killer. This seems to be the most controversial character in Beastars, and I fully understand why. They never show up again past this volume. I get when that happened for the first volume, considering that was a pilot of sorts, experimenting with characters and seeing what stuck. But we're on volume 7. It's not too late to introduce a new character by any means, but to introduce a character that is legitimately important to moving the plot along, and then just don't do anything with them after that, is so weird. The snake is just here to tell Legoshi that he's the chosen one, destined to find Tem's killer, who may or may not even be at this school anymore since this happened a year ago. I'm just saying, Legoshi really lucked out with the fact that the killer is a student, is the same age as him, and didn't go into hiding after committing a murder. Meanwhile, the Shishigumi is convincing black market vendors to side with them to get 50% of their profits. I bring this up because it teases the fact that there's more than one gang in the black market. The Inari-gumi, who are all female foxes, the Madara-gumi, who are jaguars, and the Doku-gumi, who are lizards. These guys aren't important until the end of the series, so you'd better remember them, there will be a test. At this point, we're all aware of how stubborn Louis can be, and this is pushing it even by his standards. Remember, he's an herbivore, he can't actually eat meat. This means that whenever he does, his body rejects it and he throws up. Probably not a good thing when he's living in a place that only serves meat. He's basically living off of tiny bottles of protein shakes, which is not enough to keep anyone alive. Even when Ibuki, one of the Shishigumi members, notices Louis getting way skinnier and generously offers him a salad, Louis puts on this stupid, annoying, high and mighty act about how he's not going to show weakness in front of the Shishigumi. Buddy, valuing your own life is not a weakness, and being this stubborn is not a strength either. You just come off as annoying. Oh my god, what am I doing? I'm arguing with a fictional humanoid red deer at 10:32 at night. Why is this my life?
I'll bite you if you get too close.
I guess we're looking at Juno now.
Juno shows up out of nowhere and actually tries to talk some sense into him, and it works about as well as you'd expect. Louis has convinced himself that because he's a weak little herbivore, he's never going to be able to live up to the expectations society put on him. And to be fair, there were extremely high expectations for him in school, but as Juno puts it, society doesn't dictate your fate, only you can decide how to live your life. Honestly, not a bad message. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. Back to Legoshi, and he's on the hunt for Tem's killer. In the anime, there's like this weird underwear bandit he catches, which leads him to interrogating this alpaca who used to be Tem's friend, and that gets him Tem's diary, which conveniently doesn't say who killed him. But that's the anime, and no one cares about that thing anymore. Back to the manga, where we get... oh my god, this stupid series. Pina! Fan favorite, everybody loves Pina! Stupid, sexy, flamboyant, twinkish Pina, the doll thin-horned sheep. Okay, let me just preface by saying, I love Pina. He's another addition to my growing wall of fictional characters I wish were my boyfriend. It's an embarrassing wall, with a lot of birds on it. But looking at Pina critically, he just doesn't add much to the story. He's mainly present in the Shishigumi arc, but even then, he's just kind of there. For instance, later in the arc, Legoshi finds out who Tem's killer is, and so does Pina. So Legoshi's dealing with the killer now, and Pina's caught in the crossfire. There's really no importance to having Pina present in this. He's just mirroring whatever Legoshi's dealing with at the school. I think the author herself is aware of this because she's discussed Pina's character before. In every issue of the manga, there's bonus pages at the end. These can include character sheets, behind-the-scenes looks at the manga writing process, and even bonus short comics. It's actually really cool and a nice incentive to go for the whole set of manga. For example, Volume 1 has a character sheet for Legoshi, and it's revealed that Paru got the name from Bela Lugosi, who played Dracula in the 1930s Universal horror film. That's so cool to me, and I don't know why. But back to Pina. Volume 7 has a character sheet for him. Paru outright says that Pina was introduced out of a sense of urgency because she felt that the story was getting too gloomy and it needed a charming character to bring up the mood. With most characters, it can take several months of her refining them and waiting for the right moment to introduce them, but with Pina, it only took her 3 days. So basically, Pina was rushed into the story without much thought as to how he would single-handedly move the plot along. That lines up with how he just kind of shows up out of nowhere. Nah, but I can't hate this guy. Pina's hilarious. He's so cocky and self-centered. His whole gimmick is that the only two things he really truly cares about are girls and his own horns. He's always going out with a whole bunch of girls, which leads to him getting their names mixed up all the time. Oh, this guy's awesome. My favorite thing is how everyone in the fandom agrees that Pina is extremely hot. Like, I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, at the end of the day, he is a sheep. In doing research on Pina, I went through the Beastars fandom wiki, which is genuinely a helpful tool for getting information on this series. And my favorite thing on the wiki is the comment section on Pina's article. It's either people unironically being down bad for a 16-year-old sheep, or people like this. I'm not a furry, but he's frickin' great, and I would get myself a printer and print all of his photos and just put them on a wall in my room and look at them while crying because he's not real, and yet he looks so fabulous and he's so pretty, and I'm fangirling every time I see him on screen. But I'm not a furry. Step 1, denial. Also, before I stop talking about Pina, can I just say that he's also voiced by a trans woman? That's actually really cool, and I had no idea until when doing research on Pina, I ended up coming across this voice actor panel Q&A on Legoshi's voice actor's official YouTube channel.
I have a request for another little message that I do want to give because I thought it was nice.
Queer rights. Trans rights. Okay?
That's the absolute coolest thing, and I love it so much. Actually, while we're on the subject, can I just say that this voice actor panel Q&A is one of the weirdest things I've ever watched. I mean, really. Juno's voice actor takes charge throughout the whole thing for some reason. Ibuki's microphone doesn't work, so he just sits there in the corner awkwardly and sad. Legoshi is literally just every Nintendo YouTuber ever, which gives me even more respect for him than he already had. He's like me if I wasn't a stupid loser with barely any actual friends. Bill's here for some reason. He talks once and that's it. Haru looks like a middle school language arts teacher. Louis looks nothing like how I pictured his actor looking, but he seems like a really cool guy, so he gets a pass. Jack is...
Best goodest boy ever. Oh, did you just bark?
Did you just bark?
Did you just bark?
Oh. But he freaking cosplayed as his own character. He's wearing the school uniform, and that's so weird. Anyways, back to the series. God, I got sidetracked like 5 times just now. Legoshi talks to all the Drama Club carnivores to hopefully get an idea of which one is Tem's killer. There's only really a few candidates, so it shouldn't be that difficult. Although, in this little shot of Legoshi lecturing the carnivores in a terrible way because he's a terrible public speaker, he's wearing a cross around his neck, implying the existence of a furry Jesus Christ. So, that's something. Obviously, this doesn't work, and he ends up accidentally revealing to everyone that he didn't actually have the sexiest sex with Haru that night. Whoops. That night, he goes to hang out with Haru alone, and uh-oh, looks like they're about to kiss. The moment is right. There's nobody around, nothing to stop them from finally kissing. This is it, the big moment. As long as Legoshi doesn't do or say something stupid. God damn it. So, right before they're about to kiss, Legoshi, for some inexplicable reason, decides now is the perfect time to ask Haru if she still likes Louie. Why? Why would he ask her that? God damn it, you stupid wolf. When you're about to kiss a girl, you don't just ask them if they're still in love with their ex. Jesus Christ, man. But later that night, when Legoshi's all alone, he gets jumped by Tem's killer. But he has a cold, so he's lost his sense of smell. All he knows is that Tem's killer is really big and really strong. Which doesn't help much, considering most of the carnivores in the Drama Club are really big and really strong. I guess we've ruled out Kai the mongoose, though. But Legoshi has a different trick up his sleeve. If he can't smell the killer, then he can just open-mouth kiss him instead to get his saliva. Yeah, pretty interesting as far as first kisses go. Now all he has to do is kiss every other member of the Drama Club until he gets a match. Easy as lemon meringue pie. Legoshi's in a pretty rough state after getting flung around by Tem's killer, so he calls Jack to come and help him. This is painful to watch. Legoshi needs to run away for a while to get away from Tem's killer and hopefully get strong enough to actually face him. And this makes Jack so sad. He's worried that Legoshi's never going to come back, and he starts crying, and it's just... this is so well done! Jack thinks he's losing his best friend that he's known for so many years, and he can really feel for him in this moment. Kudos to Paru for creating this part of the manga so effectively, and Ben Diskin for his stellar voice acting in this part. Legoshi tracks down Goheen the panda, who helped him in the end of the first arc, in the hopes that he'll help him learn to channel his inner strength and get stronger. Goheen reluctantly agrees to help, and training begins for Legoshi. His goal is to channel his inner strength without the aid of meat, so the first step is to get Legoshi to overcome his desire to eat meat. I'm sure overcoming a primal instinct is going to be an absolute piece of cake, but first Legoshi needs a disguise. After all, he's still in hot water with the Shishigumi. If he gets caught by one of their members, he's definitely going to get shot. So the first thing Goheen does is shave off Legoshi's fur with a goddamn scythe. Wow. Legoshi looks completely different now. I don't think the haircut is bad or anything, but... well, of course I prefer how he looked before the haircut. So, get this. His daily schedule is going to school like normal, and then training with Goheen through the whole night, running to and from Goheen's place in school. He's supposed to sleep during class, but not too much so he can still actually learn in his classes. No joke, whenever I feel like my daily schedule is too jam-packed with stuff, I remind myself that it could be a whole lot worse. Pina takes notice of Legoshi's clearly deteriorating mental state, and this gives us an interesting scene with Legoshi and Pina alone.
If I were to become a tasty little snack. Of course, in the event that someone is a girl, I just want to kiss her. So as we are now, do you want to eat me?
I'm always extremely alert when I get to scenes like this because I'm worried it's going to suddenly jump cut into some extremely hardcore sex. Or vor in this case, and honestly I don't know which is worse. Speaking of sex, it's been a while since we've gotten an uncomfy scene, so now we go to this black market strip club where this herbivore is performing for a load of carnivores in a cage. This is disgusting, this is so disgusting, and I hate it so much. Oh my god, this is the worst. I have never seen a show that had so many scenes in it I utterly despised, but still turned out to be one of my favorite shows. It's so weird how this series works. The best part of this scene is in the manga where the Shishigumi shows up to save this herbivore stripper from being devoured. For whatever reason, the perspective is all wonky and it makes Louis look super short. Why is he so short? Louis tries to convince his adopted father to sign a form withdrawing him from Cherryton. This gives us some nice father-son bonding, where the dad is happily reminiscing about saving Louis from the torture chamber he was born in, including his suicide attempt at age 5. And Louis is threatening him at gunpoint. What a big happy family we've got here. So the withdrawal gets emoted to a temporary leave of absence, and then Louis unexpectedly sees Legoshi in the black market. And okay, I'm not one to go for fan theories, especially those that try to classify random fictional characters as gay, but I'm just saying, the first thing Louis' mind jumps to when thinking about Legoshi is his ripped abs. We get one of those misunderstanding tropes. I hate misunderstanding tropes so much. Ever since that stupid part of A Bug's Life, I hate these so much. Legoshi's got a bunch of meat with him that he's taking to Goheen for his training, so Louis sees him with all this meat and assumes he's going to eat it. But Legoshi's made a massive breakthrough in that he's actually overcome his desire to eat meat. That's awesome. Good for him. How did he do that? That doesn't sound right. So now he's back on the hunt for the killer. He gets his chance when Bill decides to set up this game that carnivores play called Jaw Wars, or Tug of Jaw in the manga. It's just tug of war, but you can only use your mouth. Legoshi sees this as a perfect opportunity to deduce who Tem's killer is, so he plays a match against Bill in the hopes that he'll move up the ranks and end up facing off against the killer. He loses immediately. It seems like he's lost all of his jaw strength. He can't even bite through an apple anymore, which is definitely cause for concern. He's been going through all this intensive training, but he's only gotten weaker as a result. Well, after talking with Goheen, he gets literally flung into a battle with a meat-addicted hyena. This is where Legoshi finds out all his strength is being funneled into his limbs now. I forgot about Haru. And so did Legoshi, evidently, because she's not very happy with him right now. He's basically been ghosting her this whole time. Legoshi's been trying to get stronger for her, like he promised all the way back in the end of the first arc. But Haru doesn't want that anymore, she just wants to hang out with him. This is a very interesting turn for this relationship. Again, it feels like we're going back to that slice-of-life, realistic relationship stuff that got me hooked on this series in the first place. And then Legoshi gets ready to say something monumental. He's finally realized what the right choice is, judging by how the relationship stands and where he can see it going in the near future. In its current state, their relationship isn't working out, and Legoshi knows what he has to do. He proposes to her. He asks her to be his lawfully wedded wife. Oh my god, Legoshi, you are an absolute moron. I really want to like you, man, but just stop saying things. We get another chapter dedicated to another one-off story that doesn't add anything to the plot. It's this sheep girl who convinces this cheetah girl from the drama club to take social media pictures with her, and they start to bond. It's a nice story, and I do like it more than the chicken story from earlier, but again, what's the point? Why is this part of the official series, and why was it adapted into the anime? I guess it serves as better world building than the first one, as we get a look at the social media aspect of this world. Social media pics with carnivores and herbivores in them together usually get a lot more likes on social media platforms such as Beastgram. Have I mentioned that every app in this universe is some dumb animal pun? So Legoshi has tracked down Tem's killer and gets his chance to confront him after an accident involving Kibi! No! Why him? Why not me instead? Actually, okay, maybe not me instead. That does look really painful, jeez. He needs to be taken to the hospital wing, so Legoshi takes him along with the killer, Riz the Brown Bear. What? You don't seem very shocked. It was Riz. You know, Riz. The character that we've gotten to know so well throughout the entire series. Riz. Oh yeah, how did Legoshi find out it was Riz? Well, not by my brilliant idea of open-mouth kissing every single member of the drama club. Oh my god, can you imagine if that was like a dating simulator type game? Where you're Legoshi and your goal is to date every male member of the drama club, to kiss them and find out if they're Tem's killer? Nah, instead he drinks out of everyone's water bottles. Hopefully after his cold went away, because that's yucky. When I first watched the anime, I was so certain that Bill was going to turn out to be the killer. I thought this just because of how aggressive Bill gets whenever Legoshi brings Tem up in conversation. I think it turned out for the best that Bill didn't end up being Tem's killer, but I really wish that the author had given us more opportunities to view Riz as a character prior to the reveal. Seriously, before this, he only had like 2 lines in this arc, and neither of them served any importance to fleshing out his character. I just think it was a bit deflating to have this whole mystery built up just for the killer to be a side character that we knew nothing about. I feel like giving Riz just a bit more screen presence prior to the reveal would have helped make this reveal a lot less disappointing for me. Like I said though, I do like Riz once he's revealed. Brown bears are notoriously extremely strong and menacing, making him such a great antagonist for Legoshi. Remember, Legoshi got his butt kicked by Bill way back in the second volume, and now he's dealing with someone that's at least twice as strong as Bill. And of course, Peanut gets himself involved. I'm still not entirely clear why he decided to intervene in this, because after he does, he's definitely in the most danger out of him and Legoshi. Once again, we get a scene that I really wish was in the anime, but I'm not gonna cry because it got cut. We get some more backstory on Legoshi. His mother died when he was 12, and he has some sort of huge secret that he reveals to Jack at his mom's funeral. It's not much, but I do wish that these scenes had better representation in the anime, because the way it is, a lot of the beginning of Season 3 is going to end up being a bunch of catching up on what was left out of the second arc. Back to the present, where Goheen asks Legoshi about his family. After Legoshi freezes up for a little bit, we learn that his mom died when he was 12, which we already knew. His dad abandoned him and he was raised by his grandfather. But he seems to be hesitant to call his grandfather to the point where they haven't talked in 5 years. And then Jack just drops this bombshell of a plot development where he casually mentions how Legoshi isn't a purebred wolf. Does this mean his dad isn't a wolf? Or was he also raised in a tube just like Jack? I guess we'll find out at some point, won't we? Legoshi's backstory is something that is sorely missing from the anime. However, I fully understand why it was cut. Beastars is a show that airs in 22-minute increments. They're not going to have enough time or money to animate every single aspect of the manga. However, at this rate, I am genuinely worried about what Season 3 will look like, just because of all the plot points that need to be caught up on before then. Anyways, Legoshi unknowingly eavesdrops on some Shishigumi members and gets caught by, who else? Louie. This is the first time Legoshi's seen Louie since he showed up at school way back in Volume 6. He's so excited to see Louie that his tail will not stop wagging, which is kind of adorable. Louie decides to invite Legoshi to dinner with the Shishigumi just so he can get a good look at Legoshi's true nature, or something like that. They get some alone time and Legoshi hugs Louie like crazy and, it was adorable. The misunderstanding trope from earlier is removed because Louie realizes that he doesn't smell any meat on Legoshi. So they sit outside and talk about some stuff together. I don't know why, but some of my favorite interactions in this series are between Louie and Legoshi. I think at this point we're starting to see that more mellow side of Louie that we couldn't see at all in the first arc. He's found some sort of sense of belonging with the Shishigumi that's bringing out a side of him that we haven't seen yet. That side is amplified when Legoshi's talking to him, especially in this scene. Naturally, when Legoshi asks him to return to the school with him, he refuses. In his mind, he's left that life completely behind and has no intentions of returning. This more than makes up for Louie's character development, or lack thereof, in the first arc. You can really sense his struggle to try and find where he belongs in society. At the moment, he feels most comfortable as the leader of the Shishigumi. But seeing Legoshi again and learning that Tem's killer has been discovered is giving him second thoughts for the first time since he joined them. We'll get back to Louie later, so for now, let's go take a look at Riz. Riz is a huge brown bear. As such, he has absolutely overwhelming physical strength. This is obviously dangerous and can cause unintentional injuries, so he's legally required to take strength suppressants to keep it from growing out of control. The problem is, these suppressants include horrible side effects that can only be countered by honey. Tem was the first person to be fully honest with Riz and admit that he was kinda scary looking. Everyone else saw him as a sweet, lovable bear, but Tem was the first to see him for what he thought he truly was. This caused them to form a friendship, and Riz found that hanging out with Tem led him to feel better about himself. But this caused Riz to question if he even needed the medication anymore. After all, he wanted to get closer to Tem as his real self. So he skips one of his doses and hangs out with Tem one last time. Riz's backstory is one of my favorite scenes in the entire series just because of how well crafted it is. I especially enjoy how it feels to compare the two different perspectives of that night. Riz saw that night in a completely different light than Tem did. Looking back at how the series opened, the incident was intense and frightening. Tem is running for his life and is killed as soon as he gets cornered. But in Riz's perspective, Tem doesn't just say that carnivores are all monsters. He says how he accepts everything about Riz, especially his strength. Basically, Riz is aware that he devoured Tem in cold blood. But to cope, he's formed this twisted reality in his mind where Tem wasn't just accepting of it, but was more than happy to oblige. I know that earlier I was dissing the Riz reveal for being a random character, but it's clear that Pyro had the idea for a while just because of how fleshed out his backstory is. I just love it so much. This is the second best part of the second arc. What's the absolute best part? Well, we'll get there. So the school has finally realized, oh crud, I'm sensing some tension between herbivores and carnivores in this school. Maybe we should, do something about that. So it's announced that starting next school year, Cherryton is separating carnivores and herbivores into separate classes. The problem is they're shutting down the integrated clubs, which includes the drama club. Unsurprisingly, the drama club's all like, no, that's a bad thing. I'm keeping that in. Especially Bill and Els, who are surprisingly becoming a thing. So the drama club's planning some sort of stunt to convince the school that this is a bad idea. So their completely unique plan is an Adler performance. Is Adler just their one play? Is there any evidence of any other plays they perform besides Adler? I'm coming back in. I'm shoehorning this in because when I was going back through this in the editing block, yes, there is evidence of other plays besides Adler, and I have it right here. Hang on. I remembered in Volume 1, there's when Louis is first introduced, you can see a poster in the background in the room that they're in for Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. Well, this time is going to be a bit different. Obviously, Louis can't play the lead role, so Juno's going to instead. Gosh, I can't wait to see this Adler performance. That's definitely going to happen and isn't going to be forgotten. Juno hangs out with Haru some more. I'll be honest, whenever Juno hangs out with Haru, the whole scene is just a big nothing burger. The only thing that was talked about here is that Haru now knows Louis is alive, and, yeah. We're getting closer to the end of the arc now. This one was shorter than the first arc, but it felt so much longer to me for some reason, and I don't know why. This scene's fun because we get some more character development from Louis, which is pretty cool. The Shishigumi gang all go and watch this naked crocodile get his dick chopped off. No, I am not kidding. There's this, back alley operation carnivores can do for money where they give herbivores certain body parts that are said to heal certain illnesses. So that's why Mr. Gator is losing his pee-pee. Anyways, we get some Louis character development here where he starts to form a closer bond with Ibuki, one of the members of the Shishigumi. Turns out Ibuki was actually raised as part of this back alley operation and shows Louis some of the tattoos he has that label what each body part is supposed to help with. Is it just me or was this part not clear at all in the anime? Maybe I just zoned out at this part in the anime both times I watched it. I love this scene though. It highlights similarities between Ibuki and Louis, helping them form a stronger friendship, which is nice. Remember, before this, Louis despised all carnivores and just saw them as reminders that he's weak. But showing that Ibuki came from a similar background as Louis is starting to help him realize that not every carnivore is super strong just because they're carnivores. Eventually, he'll realize that not every herbivore is weak just because they're herbivores, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Alright, let's check back on Legoshi. What's he up to? Well, he's gonna eat a bug to try and get better connected to nature? I think? It's not really clear, but I'm sure he has his reasons. Because if Legoshi's known for anything, it's carefully planning out all of his actions and weighing all his options during the decision-making process. This is where the series takes an interesting turn. We get a lot more, spiritual stuff, I guess is the best way to describe it. It doesn't take over the entire series by any means, but before this there wasn't any of that kind of stuff. But this moment marks the first of a couple examples that we'll see later. So what do I mean by spiritual stuff? Well, after Legoshi eats the bug, he becomes one with nature, I think. And then he has this conversation with this giant moth. Huh? What? Okay. And then his fur just magically grows back because sure. Legoshi and Haru talk for the first time since Legoshi proposed to her. Haru reveals that the more she likes Legoshi, the more she worries about Louis. Legoshi reacts accordingly. At this point, Riz and Legoshi have their first ever battle. Riz calls Legoshi's body beautiful, which is interesting, and he seemed to like Tem an awful lot. Is he? Could he be? Is he? Legoshi immediately gets a cut above his eye so he can't see and loses round 1 immediately. Good frickin' job. Riz takes him to a room more suitable for fighting, being a shower room. But now I'm just confused as to what his motives were. Why does he say, "I'll regain my lost youth by devouring you"? I was not aware that had anything to do with any of his motives. I'm shoehorning this in last minute because I think I know what he's talking about now. Eating meat is one of those, separates the men from the boys kind of things. I forgot about this when writing the script, but it was brought up in Volume 3 when we first saw the black market. When Legoshi doesn't want to eat meat, after Bill mentions how all the adults are living peacefully because of the black market, he says, "Is this what it means to grow up?" Riz devoured Tem way back in the first volume, so maybe he feels that this means his youth ended too early? I'm not saying this is concrete evidence that what I said is true. I mean, I'm not... Who do I look like to you, Matt Pat? But it does make Riz's motives in this section make a bit more sense in my mind. Side note to the side note, as to why Riz thinks devouring Legoshi will help him regain his so-called lost youth, I have no idea. I think he's just crazy. Riz and Legoshi have a unique relationship, as both have found very different ways of bonding with herbivores, which is explicitly stated in this fight. Riz has decided that the only way to bond with herbivores is by devouring them, which to me sounds like him trying to convince himself that what he did was okay. Legoshi disagrees with this notion, obviously. He says that love is the only way to bond with an herbivore. Makes more sense, is a whole lot more cheesy, but... yeah, I'm hungry. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! We finally get a major breakthrough in the manga that has yet to be shown in the anime in any form. If you've only seen the anime, please shield your eyes and your ears. Shield your ears. You know how earlier Jack casually mentioned that Legoshi wasn't a pureblood wolf? Well, his grandpa is a Komodo dragon. Pretty cool, huh? That's all we get for now. We're still not shown why Legoshi's mom committed suicide or anything like that. But still, this is a major breakthrough in Legoshi's backstory that just isn't in the anime for some reason. Maybe they forgot about it. So Riz and Legoshi are still fighting, but after they get interrupted by a cleaning lady, they decide to postpone the fight for a later date, being New Year's Eve. The scary part about this ordeal is how quickly Riz can snap out of his fury and go back to his innocent mask. That's honestly pretty freaky to me. Meanwhile, Pina's taking a piss and Riz can't help but watch. I know that's not actually what's happening, but seriously, he's looking right at the sheep dick. Riz tells Pina about his upcoming fight with Legoshi and reminds him that he's involved with this too. He threatens that once he defeats Legoshi, Pina's gonna be next. To show Pina how serious he is, Riz eats his finger. Okay, but not really. He just licks it a bunch, which might honestly be worse. Ew. In all seriousness, I think the stakes would have been way higher if Riz had actually eaten Pina's finger. I'm honestly not sure why he didn't. I guess he just wanted to scare Pina or something. In response, Pina gives this anime villain-style speech during rehearsals clearly targeted at Riz. Alright, back to Louie. It's nice to see that him and Ibuki are hanging out alone together. It's nice to see them grow a sort of friendship over time. But now it's time for what is, hands down, the best scene of the arc. Maybe of the entire series, just because of how funny it is. Legoshi wants to tell Louie about his upcoming battle, but now that his fur has grown back, he needs another disguise. So, yeah. This is hilarious. No one knows what to do about this, including Legoshi himself. Louie just gets so freaking mad at him, and Ibuki assumes it's some extremely ugly girl trying to hit on Louie. So Legoshi tells Louie about Riz, and Louie says something that I feel genuinely stupid for not wondering on my own.
Just call the goddamn police.
Legoshi wants Louie to be there to see the fight, and Louie's all like, what? No. But Legoshi's like, no, it's cool. It's gonna be under a freeway. And Louie's all like, that's even weirder. No, go away. This scene is absolutely hilarious in every way. I think it's better in the anime just because of how awesome the voice actors are at delivering the lines.
New Year's Eve under the Gossada overpass at 11 p.m.
I'll be waiting!
Don't be! I'm not going!
But now, the big event has begun. The main climax of the arc. The final battle between Legoshi and Riz. And it starts out in a pretty crazy way. Riz wants to get Legoshi all riled up, just like Legoshi did with Riz for the first fight. In this case, Riz reveals that he... No! He ate Pina! No! Okay, false alarm. Pina isn't actually dead, but geez, don't scare me like that. Meanwhile, Louis can't stop thinking about Legoshi, but Ibuki helps him realize two things. One, carnivores are stronger when they have something to protect. Oh my gosh, that explains so much. This actually explains quite a bit about Legoshi's character. When he first started getting feelings for Haru, he became protective of not just her, but small herbivores in general. That's what led to his fight with Bill way back in Volume 2 and his ordeal with the Shishigumi at the end of the first arc. But the second thing Louis realizes here is that he actually likes carnivores. Leading the Shishigumi has shown him a side of carnivores that he turned a blind eye towards prior, but started reconsidering after he met Legoshi even if he wasn't willing to admit it. After this realization, he decides that enough is enough and he needs to leave the Shishigumi, with no intention of returning. Ibuki's having none of this because Louis the best thing to ever happen to the Shishigumi, and more importantly, Louis changed Ibuki for the better in the short span he was their leader. They go into this tunnel and...
There's no telling if you'll make it to the other side.
No! He ate Louis! No! This is actually when the episode ends. We get what is probably the most painful cliffhanger I've ever seen in my life. It's silly to think that when I first watched this episode, I genuinely thought Louis had died. Well, that's not the case. Ibuki was going to devour him, but Free, played by Kellen Goff, shot him in the back before he could do anything. See, way before this, Ibuki had made Free promise that if he ever loses his mind and tries to devour Louis, then Free needs to shoot him, and that's just what he did. As we'll see in the next arc, this is a very pivotal moment for Louis. It really helps cement that fact that I mentioned earlier, where carnivores are a lot stronger when they have something, or someone, to protect. To the point where if Ibuki is in a situation where he can't resist the urge to devour Louis, he'd rather die than let that happen. Back to the fight real quick, where this happens. Yeah, remember Legoshi's whole bug-eating escapade where he learned to respect life and got connected to nature or something? Well, I guess this would make sense if it was a metaphorical transformation thing, but apparently Riz can see all these moths exploding out of Legoshi too? That part I don't fully understand. I'm starting to notice that as we near the end of this arc, there's a lot of scenes that really leave a lot up to interpretation. That's not a bad thing by any means, but now I'm worried that I'm going to make other Beastars fans mad that I didn't fully understand what was happening in parts of this story. Riz is getting pretty mad now, and he gets hit after hit after hit on Legoshi. I'm not one who really enjoys seeing someone get super beat up in anything, and this might be some of the most brutal injuries I've ever seen. Which just goes to show how little violence in movies and sex on TV I've really watched prior to Beastars. Is that why this series struck a chord with me? In a way that I wasn't expecting? Was it morbid curiosity, combined with the general enjoyment of slice-of-life content? Well, I cracked the code. No need to continue with the analysis. See y'all next time, everybody. Nah, just kidding. We got a while before I'm gonna let you leave. I mean, you could just back out of this video whenever and cease the late-night ramblings of a Beastars fan, but you're not gonna do that during the climax, are you? And now that half of you have left, let's keep going. Riz finally admits that deep down he knew all along that he didn't have Tem's permission to eat him and was never going to get it. He had just convinced himself that was the case as a coping mechanism. Legoshi finds the perfect opportunity to stall for time, so he invites Riz to continue talking about it while in this... a bedroom pose. Oh, okay. As Riz talks about that night with Tem, Legoshi realizes that there's a very fine line when carnivores feel love for herbivores. He almost crossed that line himself with Haru the night they met. In fact, if I recall correctly, the only reason he snapped out of it was because that goat distracted him when Louis got injured. I really like how, for the most part, the villains in this series are reflections of paths Legoshi didn't take. Riz represents what would have happened if Legoshi had actually devoured Haru and became overcome with guilt. And later, Melon will represent... Well, actually, let's save that for after the people who only watch the anime go home for the night, okay? Louis finally arrives, and with a quick distraction, they find a hiding spot, and this is yet another great scene to add to the constantly growing list. Legoshi mentions how he needs to see this fight through to the very end, regardless of whether or not he comes out of it alive, to take responsibility for his own violent nature, which is an echo of what Louis said to him in the beginning of the first arc. Legoshi goes as far as to say it's thanks to Louis that he didn't become a monster. At first, Louis puts on his typical act that he's been using for so long about how all carnivores have nothing but savage instincts and how weak herbivores are in comparison, all that stuff. But what Legoshi said, combined with what Ibuki helped him realize before his death, has become too much for Louis to handle. So he does something that we haven't seen him do at all in this entire series. He cries. This is it. Louis' character development has hit a peak. We've seen him grow immensely in this arc alone. When we first saw him, he was stubborn in his attempt to look tough, and he had a hatred for carnivores, seeing them only as reminders of how weak he truly was. But after joining the Shishigumi, Ibuki helped him discover more about carnivores than he ever knew during his time at Cherryton. He finally realized that after all this time, deep down, he's actually liked carnivores. Legoshi was the first carnivore he met that led to him questioning his opinions on carnivores, but in his pursuit to become stronger, it led him to lose Ibuki, someone he truly cared about. He views himself as a weak herbivore in a world of monstrous carnivores, which stems from his childhood in the black market. A childhood that still haunts him to this day due to the product number printed on the bottom of his foot. So Louis decides to sever ties with his past once and for all.
What if I were to offer you one of my legs? You'd salivate and happily accept, am I right?
See, Legoshi's in no fit state to fight Riz at this point. I mean, we saw what this guy was doing to him. One more hit and Legoshi's probably gonna die. So Louis comes to the conclusion that the only way for Legoshi to gain the strength to keep fighting is to eat meat. So Louis offers him his own leg to eat. And once again, we get a whole bunch of Louis foot shots, and I just know that someone out there really likes these foot shots. Anyways, this serves as a win-win for both Legoshi and Louis. If Legoshi eats Louis' leg, not only will it give the strength boost he needs to finish Riz, but also free Louis from what he views as a curse. It's probably also symbolic that his product number is 4, which is notoriously an unlucky number in East Asian countries, including Japan, to the point where it's avoided in a lot of situations. So after Legoshi declines the offer a couple times due to, this whole arc being about his journey to suppress his carnivorous instincts, he agrees and eats Louis' leg. The more I write about this part in the script, the more it makes me realize how batshit insane this entire story is. Like, this part's definitely one of the wilder ones in this series, but still. Anyways, the fight is resumed, and... how should I put this? I don't know. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to him the day he held aloft his magic leg and said, "By the power of meat?" Oh my god, this is the worst improv I've ever done. Please stop listening to me. Turn this video off.
I can't believe you. You really ate him, huh?
Okay, it hasn't shown Louis yet, but Legoshi did only eat his leg. He has enough self-control to keep him from eating anything else. Right?
And now, you're exactly the same as me.
No, because you ate all of Tem, and Legoshi definitely only ate Louis' leg.
He is alive.
There, see? He's still alive. Good. Whew. I got worried over nothing.
Louis is here with me. Inside me. Around me.
Oh no. He was being weirdly metaphorical. No! He ate Louis! No! Oh my god, stop doing that. I like these characters too much for any of them to be killed off. And by any of them, I mean Louis and Pina only, because they're the only characters that this series has done that with so far. For the first time that we've seen, Riz feels true regret for what he did with Tem, after seeing how even after Legoshi devoured part of Louis, they still share that sort of special bond that Riz desired out of Tem. And with that, Legoshi has won the battle. No, Riz didn't die, but he's finally come to terms with what he did, so he sort of surrenders. Pina called the police, who, conveniently enough, arrived as soon as the battle was over. Louis gets taken to the hospital, and Riz and Legoshi get placed under arrest. Riz gets sent to prison, and Legoshi gets released after testimonies are given, but is now a registered meat offender. God, the series. And with that, we've ended the second arc. I like the first arc more. The second arc takes everything from the first and builds on it in a very natural way, for the most part. I do think that while Paru had a good idea of where to take the series at the very beginning, that wasn't as true with the second arc. That's not to say that the second arc feels rushed or not well thought out, but there's no denying that some elements of this arc didn't have as much story significance as I think Paru wanted them to, mainly the snake, Pina, and in my opinion, Riz's initial reveal as Tem's killer. I really enjoy plenty of aspects of this arc. Focusing on Louis for the majority of character development in this arc was, in my opinion, a great choice. That's mainly because the first arc didn't have much of that. There's not much difference in how Louis acted in Volume 1 compared to Volume 6. Again, if anything, he's crazier. But this arc actually gave him some much needed realizations about how the world he lives in functions and how his personal beliefs regarding carnivores versus herbivores didn't exactly line up with how the situation actually is. His bond with Ibuki, his interactions with Legoshi, and his ultimate sacrifice at the end of the arc are some of my favorite aspects of the series. However, there are some characters that were prominent in the first arc and were mainly pushed to the side in this one. For the most part, that's fine. We didn't need that much more Bill content in this arc. But I think the lack of Haru in this arc is surprising. She played such a prominent role in the first arc, and now she's basically been pushed to the side in favor of Legoshi and Louis taking center stage. I'm actually kinda cool with this. Haru was never really my favorite character. I like her, but I do think fleshing out Legoshi and Louis in this arc was a good choice, even if it meant pushing Haru to the side. Besides, she already did get quite a bit fleshed out during the end of the first arc with her backstory scene. We get a lot more talk about bonds between herbivores and carnivores, and the way they're described makes it feel like a carnivore eating meat and creating a bond with an herbivore gives them what can only be described as magic powers. I don't mind this, but as I've mentioned before, what got me hooked on this series was the violence of it all and how it combined with the slice of life stuff in a very interesting way. In other words, I didn't sign up for this series because of the spiritual stuff that was going to show up later on in the series. We kinda got a glimpse of that in the first episode of the anime, where Legoshi undergoes this, transformation thing when he first sees Haru. But in my mind, that's all metaphorical, which I'm totally okay with. But when what should be a metaphorical change in a story like this actually becomes a physical change, such as the whole moth ordeal and the transformation Legoshi undergoes near the end of this fight, that's when it starts to kinda lose me. And while we're on the subject, am I the only one that finds it kind of annoying that Legoshi's whole arc in this section was devoted to him overcoming his desire to eat meat? And then all of that work is just negated at the end because Louis needed a satisfying end to his arc? I fully enjoy how Louis and Legoshi benefited from the final scene. I really do. And yet, in the back of my mind, it almost makes everything Legoshi went through in this arc all for nothing, you know? And I get that it's supposed to be like that. The whole point of these primal instincts is that no matter how hard you try, you can't overcome them. But still, it is a bit irritating to me. It's weird to say that the first arc was my favorite, especially since most of my favorite scenes in the entire series come from the second arc. But in terms of atmosphere and storytelling, I do think that while it's a very close call, the first arc wins. Also, what the heck did they do to the opening theme for the anime? The first season had this genuinely amazing stop motion thing going on, and the song had a jazzy feel. It was literally my favorite form of animation combined with one of my favorite forms of musical numbers, and it was great. But for the second season, the song's fine, but a far cry from what the first season had. The animation is just edited shots from the first season. I like the very end of it though, where it uses shots from the manga itself. It looks like a Marvel logo I can actually care about. I need to emphasize though, just because I like the first arc more doesn't mean I don't like the second arc. In fact, I'd say it was an extremely close call. They both shine in different categories, making it hard to even decide which one I prefer. But overall, if I had to go back to the first season, I'd rewatch the whole thing. But with the second season, I think I'd just skip to my favorite scenes and only watch those. Having gone back through the entire anime, I can easily tell why I fell for it so much. It really was like nothing I had ever seen prior to it. It's not like Beastars includes never-before-seen film elements or completely unique ideas all across the board. I mean, Zootopia basically did similar things, but aimed at a more family-friendly audience. But for me personally, I had never seen a show that was just so goddamn unafraid to treat mature themes in a mature way. Don't get me wrong, I have seen adult shows before, but as has been said plenty of times by people much more experienced than myself, Most adult shows, especially animation, feel more targeted towards edgy preteens sneaking out of their bedrooms after their 8 o'clock curfew to catch the newest episode of Brickleberry or whatever's popular nowadays. Stuff like Hell of a Boss and The Angry Video Game Nerd are by no means children's shows, but there's no denying that they both focus a lot more on constant swearing and Teen Titans Go levels of poopy poop humor above all else. And of course, that stuff works for the style those shows are going for. But Beastars was different for me, you know? Okay, at this point, I'm just rambling, it's late, and I'm trying to get some sort of point across. Paru's character designs are some of the best I've seen. It's hard to find characters that just resonate with me the way the characters in Beastars did. I think the design and personality traits of all of them were absolutely on point. They all bounce off each other so well, which ties back to another thing that struck me so well with the series, being the realism. Now obviously that started to fade when Season 2 started doing weird stuff, but that definitely didn't deter my enjoyment for the show. It was weird, yeah, but setting up everything with a slice-of-life approach before introducing the more fantastical aspects with the bug eating and the carnivore-herbivore bonds was an absolutely fantastic idea. But I think the best way to describe why Beastars hooked me so easily is by showing what I was mainly watching when Beastars came on my radar. Which would you rather watch? This? Or this? Yeah, that's what I thought. I've made a lot of regretful decisions in my life. This is one of them. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I'm only going to address one of them. One you may or may not even have. So if you're a fan of the series, or if you actually paid attention in the beginning of my analysis, you'll remember that the series is split into 3 arcs. There's the Meteor Festival arc, the Shishigumi arc, and the Melon arc. Okay, I'm losing oxygen by the second, so let's try and speed through this. Now, I've already talked about the first 2 arcs, but there's the last one, the Melon arc, that I haven't discussed yet, and there's a very good reason for that. As you may know, there is no Season 3 of the anime yet. So what I did, originally, my initial plan was to cover everything in this one video, all 3 arcs and the spin-off series Beast Complex. But when I started doing editing for the Melon arc, I realized since there's no anime Season 3 yet, I had to only use manga shots, and that is frickin' boring. It was boring for me to edit, and it'd be boring for you to watch. So here's what I'm gonna do. This is a part 1 of 2. Part 2 will not be released until Season 3 of the anime comes out, which is scheduled to be late 2024. And even then, that's just the Japanese version. I don't know when the English dub is coming out, but I'm sure it's sometime in mid-2025. So if you're a fan of the series and want to see more content like this from the channel, go find something else to do until 2025. And if you're a fan of my LaserDisc content and want more of that instead of this, then just wait a bit longer. I can't devote my life to LaserDiscs. I just can't. I need other things to talk about from time to time. And, yeah. Bye.